I'll tell you what, gang, I'm thinking of taking off my thermal vest, 2 sweaters, woolly hat, and a scarf, not to mention my gloves. Quite warm. Quite warm. And this isn't doing me any favors either. So, welcome along. This is the ABC of CBD exclusive and only to be found on Men's radio station. I'm 80% of Russ Kane, and we're coming at you, of course, live and direct. I can't believe this. We are at show number 80. 80. 80. Unfreaking believable. I am so proud of, of this man, really. You know him, and let's face it, you've grown to love him. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Oliver Mammon. Oh, can't hear you.
What's up, guys? Sorry, I put myself on
now.
mute there for a second. Do apologise. Hey, everybody. 80 weeks, 80 episodes. Thank you so much for everyone who's watched and followed and supported us. I mean, without you guys listening and watching, we probably would have given up after 3 weeks. So,
well, you might have. I wouldn't have. I would have persevered.
Thank you so much for everyone who supported us, and thank you so much for everyone who's come on the show and participated as a guest. You know, also without you
about
guys,
100+ guests from all over the world, from round the corner to Kentucky to all over the place. And I want to say, and I'm quite serious, a big well done, thank you to Ollie Mammon.
Thank you, Russ.
This is. It was really an experiment. When this was proposed to me by my business partner, I thought, ooh, okay, I'll give it a month. 80 shows later, going stronger than ever, better guests than ever. It's just gone like a rocket ship, and it's exciting. It's pioneering, and I'm just a passenger. It's all down to Ollie. So well done to you. Anyway,
I appreciate that, Russ.
It's true. 80 shows. It's a big darn achievement.
Thank you.
Now, Ollie, why don't you introduce your very special guest with the most complicated spelling of a name I've ever
first
seen.
of all, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Russ is on meds at the moment because of all of his pain, so there are certain things he's forgetting. If you're not like on YouTube, you can follow us on Men's Radio. You can like the Facebook page. Communicate with us, send us messages, feel free to interact with us. Also, Russ, the sponsor, we have to do that as well.
Jeez,
there we go.
What a great idea.
But it's
you know
okay.
what happens when you're on a lot of drugs?
Russ is here, and I'm just happy that Russ is here. And also, it's fun to be the organised
Give me a second,
one in the room.
I'll actually try and find. Ladies and gentlemen, let's pay the rent.
I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD. A product created by users for users. A product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price.
Now, this is all Ollie's fault, and I'm going to tell you why it's Ollie's fault. Because when I broke my hand and got the wires in it, it's constantly painful. So I said to Ollie, look, talking the talk if you don't walk the walk. Right. So I said, can you send me a package of stuff, like a care package? So Ollie, being the golden-hearted, big-hearted bloke that he is, sent me all this stuff. Holy moly. So I was in a lot of pain yesterday, and so I took everything he sent.
How much of the drops did you take?
I don't know. Quite a few. I was taking that. I was vaping. I was rubbing on the balm. It was marvelous. Blooming well helps. And
all CBD as well. All broad spectrum extracts. So like all fully legal. Didn't even have to drug him properly.
No, and I've got to say, because we talk about this, we talk about the effectiveness. Blow me down. In all seriousness, I'm not just saying it. Why would I? It works. It works. So thank you all. I really
the right products for the right elements, taken in the right dosages at the right time. It works.
Out of everything, if you don't want to try anything else, and this is a serious thing about the Tincture Club and what Ollie does, all right? And I'm a walking example of it. If you think, I don't want to put drops, I don't fancy the drops. Okay. Try the balm. It's like a deodorant stick. Try it. Extraordinary. Honestly. You got back. I sound like I'm doing an advert here, but I'm not. In all seriousness, try it. You will be stunned. Contact Ollie. All the stuff is up on screen. give it a go. And I think that, and there's a discount for our listeners, of course.
Yeah, if
But
you
do
want the
try it.
balms and stuff, message me directly and we could figure something out. But at the moment, Tincture Club is just for drops. But if you want the balms or if you need vapes or anything like that, feel free to contact us. We're about to increase our B2C offering anyway, just because we want to make sure the right products are getting in people's hands, and more, you call it, unique products getting in people's hands, bespoke products getting in people's hands for the ailments they really need. So we're about to increase our offering at Taylor Mammon dramatically to kind of facilitate all of your needs out there. I understand it's a hard
we've hit
world.
a bit of a mother load here. Veronica Curran up in Edinburgh in Scotland. Is that the balm? Yes.
Yeah, it's the balm.
Let me hang on, don't go away.
Slightly different from yours,
Stay where you
Veronica. Slightly different from yours. Slightly different concoction of ingredients. But yeah, very, very similar logic. I kind of designed yours for you and him for his
Here
for
we
him.
go. So it's basically this, all right? Because it's important, because otherwise this is all theoretical. And you just unscrew it like you would a deodorant thing or probably a makeup thing, and you just twist the bottom and you rub it on. Honestly, I don't.
The only issue is they twist the wrong way. So they twist counterclockwise.
Do you know what? I thought the other one had run out.
Yeah, twist counterclockwise, not clockwise. You twist the body as opposed to twisting the base.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's a bit weird.
On with the show.
Quick question. No, because this is all about the use. And if we can't talk about the use, then it's all theoretical nonsense. Right. Facebook users, so they're watching, that means they're watching on my espresso bar, which is a thing. My wife has
RA, rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh, well, hello.
That's what I assume. I assume RA means rheumatoid arthritis.
The balm
That's what I would go to.
Gang, one of the things that I found from the hospital where I have to keep going is they said, oh, by the way, you got arthritis. And of course, this will propel it even worse. Yes, the answer is Facebook user. Yes, it will.
And also, the fact of the matter is there are a lot of balms out there on the market. A lot of balms are made to kind of, they have CBD as a novel ingredient to try and sell them and to try and make the product seem more appealing. But then there are balms which are made, which are, really good. I'm not saying that my balms are really good, but I mean, generally, I'm getting quite good feedback.
Well,
so
he doesn't have to say it, but I'm just a punter, and I'm saying to you, it's great. Right, Ollie, enough of that.
On with the show. So, about 4 weeks ago, I got a mysterious Facebook message from a mysterious name that I could not even pronounce, and I was sitting there, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's engage. And basically, the message seemed super interesting. Actually, seemed too interesting to ignore. I've never spoken to this person before on Messenger. So it was the first message that came through, which is always a little bit strange. And so the first message that comes through for someone is interesting. It wasn't spam. I knew it wasn't spam because the way it was written was the way I write. It was like 17 messages, but pow, 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 pow to make one whole message. Okay. And it started like this. Hi, Oliver. Just thought I would give you a sneak update. Paul Tossell, out of 45 companies so far, has a 14.5% approval rating. Over 95% believe there should be an investigation into the FSA's handling of novel food. A similar percentage believe that it's highly likely there's a relationship between the ACI and the FSA, and there's little to no confidence on how the FSA have handled things or that they will carry on fairly for all companies. Now, that was the bulk of the message. Now, I know straight about novel food. Paul Tossell, to be honest with you, very brave man. That's all I'm going to say. Very, very, very brave man taking on this challenge. Very hard challenge, but very brave man. And the name came up, Cefyn Jones. And I'm sitting there like, okay, cool, brilliant. How do you pronounce that name? So the first thing I did was go on Google, find out exactly how to pronounce that name, because I knew that my initial pronunciation in my mind, my dyslexic brain of the sounding it out didn't work. So I'm thinking Cefyn. I couldn't figure it out. So I go online. His name's Cefyn Jones. I've actually met.
I've never seen it spelt like that. It's amazing.
I've actually met Cefyn before. I couldn't remember where or when, but the name clicked. So I reached out to him, and basically I said, "Want to talk about this on the show?" Because I thought that's the best way of engaging this. Because I feel like it's a conversation we need to have. We've had novel food conversations. We've discussed novel food. My business partner Nathan came on. We talked about novel food. We've had a few other people who have discussed it. What we haven't had is almost a group opinion which has been shared. And I thought, you know what? We are a CBD podcast. We are for the industry. This novel food thorn in all of our sides, us as a community and them as the FSA, has been a nightmare for everyone. And I feel like it just needs a platform. Now, one thing I did say to Cefyn is, everyone's trying their hardest, so it's important to do. And he completely agreed with me. He's just going out there, asking questions and analyzing how the market sees it. So it's very important that today everyone knows that Cefyn has gone and done a poll off of his own back to try and understand how the market's perceiving everything. These are not Cefyn's opinions. These are, you could call it, community facts. And that's why I just wanted to kind of get out there before we even start, because those statements seemed a little bit, a little bit straight to the point. But at the end of the day, it's just what 50, 60, 70 different CBD companies out there think. And I would love to, that's the main reason we brought Cefyn on, just to kind of share like his story and why he accumulated this data and what his findings were, as well as getting a bit of information about him and his journey in this industry so far. So if we can welcome on Cefyn, give him a big round of applause for joining us.
The spelling is fantastic.
Thank you very much. Hi, Oliver. Hi, Russ.
Hello
Fair
there.
introduction.
That hand's looking rather pretty there, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
What exactly did you do?
I went on a blind date with Amber Heard. Nobody warned me. Moving on.
Yeah. Thank you. That's giggle worthy. I got to say as well, your intro music, your advert music, that's a nice fat beat you got.
Isn't it good? Isn't the advert fantastic?
Cefyn was in the background rapping. He was rapping to the advert.
I love it every week. Every week I love that.
I was kind of feeling the vibe, and I was like, yeah, I've got lyrics for that. I could really do a remix, Kev.
Oh yeah.
Love the idea.
CBD remix 12-inch version.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Introduction was fair, right?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't sell products. I've worked with a lot of companies in a lot of different areas. They're affiliated to lots of different people, and I like to try and be fair, and one of the things that I've done over the time that I've been in the industry is certainly listen to what people have got to say. And one of the things that has been said is that there are a lot of issues that just aren't being addressed. It's all about transparency at the end of the day, and if you've got a simple question and you don't even get a sensible reply, or you're constantly brushed off, as some companies have found, then you can only accept that that's going to get frustrating and lead to a point. Yeah. And that's ultimately where I decided that this poll was necessary. You see some really big people out there who have been engaging with the FSA and the likes of, and you feel like you feel for them, because it's almost like they're smacking their head against a stone wall and just getting this constant like logic loop of like, you can't do that because of this. Yeah, but that. Yeah, but no, you can't for this. And you just got to go. Exactly. So you've got to try a different roads, and I think this, in essence, was it.
I think the main thing as well is that there's no blueprint out there. So there's no idiot's guide to starting a cannabis company in the UK. It doesn't exist. I mean, they exist for everything else, but not for our industry. Why? Because our industry is very new. And because it's new, there's no like structure around it. There's no structure around the CBD space. There's no real structure around the medical space. There's no real structure around the hemp industry, especially a structural foundation to help it flourish. That definitely doesn't exist. And it's one thing I have to agree with you on. It's nice that you listen. I think it's great that that there is someone out there who just listens, who just wants to know, because so many people are screaming and shouting. Sometimes it's nice that someone's just listening to those screamers and shouters. On the other side, it's important that people know they're not alone, and people only know they're not alone when someone like you listens to them and says, you're not alone. There are other people who are also in your boat, and that very often gets missed because people don't listen. And they assume they're the only ones going through this. But in reality, there's probably, 1,500, 2,000 of us CBD families out there within this community. And our families are all struggling, the bigger ones and the smaller ones. Why? Because it is complicated as hell. Those who have spent thousands and thousands getting somewhere, and those who haven't are still in the same position of not really knowing what the clarity is. It's not like, and it creates, I understand like what you were saying, creates this this opaqueness, when in reality there should be a transparency. It creates this blockade visually, whereas in reality there should be clear sight, and that doesn't exist. And how, as children, because that's what we all are in this industry, we're naive, we're young, how as children are we ever going to grow and flourish and create something which our country, our mother around us can be proud of us and can support us in, if there's no guide or no structure to us kind of getting there? So I agree with what you're saying completely, Kev.
It's always been a work in progress, though, hasn't it? I mean, we're a food industry, but we're a food industry with a special dynamic focus, as it were. You know, there are standard requirements for each food company that everyone should be aware of, and there are those sensible maneuvers where you have the appropriate lab reports, microbial, cannabinoid, all of those bits and pieces. And you know, for the vast majority, I think it was getting to that point. I mean, certainly in 2017, when we had novel foods in its first instance, like, you know, that was something that was quite being, you know, brought about. And I say 2017.
I think you might have been one of the first people, Kev, to actually hear about novel food. If you think about your position at the time, the associations you were working with and stuff, I mean, you were in a position where you heard about novel food and you were trying to disseminate that information across, you know, our industry 5 years ago. And I remember, like, it's, you know, some of your colleagues were the first people to tell me about this. And when I first heard it, I was like, no, bullshit. Because, you know, like, it's not something I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know that there is a brick wall at the end of my tunnel. I just wanted to drive down my tunnel. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I know that it's been in your brain for a very long time. And it's one thing I wanted to ask you, almost knowing the tsunami was coming and then seeing the tsunami now hit. Have you been a bit like, why didn't no one listen to me? Or have you been in a situation where maybe, like, you're sitting there like, I was telling people about this 5 years ago and you waited until 5 months ago to start paying attention to it? Have you had, because, like, it was something you guys were screaming and shouting about at the beginning. Fine, yes, everyone thought it was a scare tactic, but in reality, it wasn't. It was reality. And I just wanted to kind of get your opinion about that. That's actually not one of my questions. I just thought, got to ask it.
I just got to clear that up. See, the trade association there that I started working with, that wasn't until 2018, but I started talking to them as a company owner. I had a brand called Lovebud, and it was at the AGM at the time in 2017 when novel foods for isolates was basically announced. From my understanding, the Home Office went to the FSA and asked for all cannabinoids to be deemed as novel, but the then head of novel foods said, yeah, that works for isolates, but not broad and full spectrum products. Now, in all honesty, that kind of makes sense, right? Because at the end of the day, look where isolates were. Were they out of a lab in 1996, let alone in a product format? Highly likely no. But with whole plant and broad spectrum products, yeah, definitely. So I could get that. But it's when the second incarnation came in, right? And that's where it started getting a little bit crazy. And you said, like, you know, what were companies like? Now, I was telling a lot of them that if the rules don't make sense, then you need to ask the people who are making the rules why they're making them. Right now, obviously, you know, as time went by, we learned that we were getting governed by 16 lab reports for pharmaceutical grade isolate on whole plant products. You know, that doesn't quite make sense. You know, the thing is a lot of companies didn't want to ask that question.
Just 1 second, Kev. Basically, Russ, what they're doing is they're judging a circle by a square. So you've got a palm tree and you're analyzing a palm tree, and based on your narrative of a palm tree, you're talking about a fern. It doesn't make sense. Do you know what I mean?
Old-fashioned way that I like is that you're not comparing apples and apples.
You're not comparing apples and apples, exactly. You're comparing apples and oranges or apples and pears.
You're supposed to get a baseline from this, and
how you're supposed to build a farm which is supposed to grow oranges when you're actually supposed to grow apples, and that's kind of what they're saying.
Absolutely right.
The blueprint for one logic doesn't apply to the foundational structure for the other logic which you actually want to imply. Sorry about that, Kev, but I'm going to do that a lot just to kind of create a bit more standing around it, just in case there's a listener or a viewer or someone who's new who doesn't have the understanding that you have, which is extraordinary. I just want to make sure that we can explain it further. Sorry about that.
So from that point, then, we knew what lab reports were being used. We knew how it was being kind of managed and directed. The thing is that companies took a long time to kind of start asking the questions, because they were caught in this kind of roller coaster ride of what's the next update? What hoop am I going to have to jump through? How am I going to be able to get through that?
Also, Kev, at the start, there was no real, what's it called? There wasn't a clear direction on where our requests and where our shouts should be going. So, it was that whole, like, if you don't understand it, ask the question. But usually there should be someone to ask a question to. And in the early days, we didn't know if we were speaking to MHRA. We didn't know if we were speaking to FSA. We didn't know if we were speaking to Drug Administration, firearms. No one really knew who we should be speaking to. And I've got some communication from MHRA back in 2015, which I found on my computer recently. And I was just like, oh, wow, yeah, that was completely wrong. Like the Medical Healthcare Regulatory Authority, they were pushing me to do one thing, but in reality, that's not what I needed to do. And they were talking about marketing authorization and this and that, because it was also new for them at the time. And they didn't know, is the community trying to sell a medicine or is the community trying to sell a food? So there was that scramble originally of us, but also them. And then when there's a scramble at the top and a scramble at the bottom, and the lines just can't get connected because it's just messy, we have nowhere to direct our energy to. And wherever our energy is going, the conversation is going, answers aren't coming back from the same directions. It created, a space which was kind of not doomed from the start, but definitely messy from the start.
Well, there was that crossover, wasn't there? I think the MHRA almost faded out roughly about 2019 when the FSA, at the end of 2019, when the FSA kind of started mentioning about maybe 70 milligram RDA. It's interesting, though, isn't it, that because what information did the MHRA use to determine that their 200 milligram an RDA kind of was accepted and safe, that the Food Standards Agency didn't kind of use, and again, when you're a company, you will miss these kind of crossovers. I mean, I don't hear of anyone kind of getting tapped on the shoulder by the MHRA these days. It's kind of purely in the kind of driving side of the
I had the MHRA show up at my house. I had the MHRA with like armed police show up at my house. Like, all right, look, mate, look. Really? And it was real. I was like, look, what have I done? And they're like, listen, you're illegally importing cannabinoids. It was like really weird, because it was like, are you making medicine? I was like, no, I'm making bath bombs. Like I'm making bath bombs and balms and not medicine.
I think the problem is you used the word bombs. That probably set
and then they're like, all right, cool.
Guys, what does MHRA stand for? What is it? What's an acronym for?
That's the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Authority.
Okay.
Bam. So I've got a question, Kev. Can we go back in time a little bit? So we get like who you are and where you're coming from, and we're going to move back into that in a second. I want to know a little bit about you, your background, how you found yourself in this world, how you came to be so knowledgeable, as in, you didn't wake up, one day. You weren't born a cannabis enthusiast. You know what I mean? You weren't born someone who creates polls and wants to find information and wants to disseminate information, who wants to educate. So how have you got to that point, and how have you got to that point in this industry? So what was take 5 minutes, just give us your journey, like how cannabis first came into your life, potentially like any medical or personal interactions with cannabis, family interactions with cannabis. Give us a little bit of your story.
It all started with bagpipes and hip hop. Although when I took up the bagpipes at the age of 11, I didn't know that hemp thread actually was, cannabis thread that makes them airtight. And it wasn't until I was 15 that I started coming across Rizla. I went to Germany and I was outside of a pub listening to some guys beatbox and freestyle. I'd kind of gone to a boarding school where I'd kind of got brought up with Public Enemy, Ice Cube, the likes of. Thought I'd give it a try. And then I kind of got really heavily into the hip hop culture. I just embraced it,
I love you. So I love you so much. I'm literally dying here. I love you so much. I love it. How has this happened? But anyway, carry on.
So yeah, I kind of become a little bit enamored with cannabis in culture from that kind of point. I was on stage, I could only write lyrics about smoking weed, nothing else. But then I started kind of seeing what the odd bit of trafficking was like. Not massive. We're talking about a half or a kilo of White Widow that was cannabis cut with her at that time, 1996. And from there, I kind of came back into the UK, and I actually had half ounce of hydrochronic and a quarter of White Widow on me. As soon as that left, I turned around to my brother and said, "Here's a tenner, go get me something." And he came back with this little stick of hash, and I literally cried. It was just like, I left heaven and come
ask you
to
a
a point
question?
even worse
Why
than
were you
hell.
consuming? Why were you consuming just recreationally, or like now later on in life, did you realize that potentially you were using medicinally, subconsciously, as in or was it always just for the pleasure of it? As in, like, do you understand what I mean? So like, I didn't realize until I was 22 that cannabis did what it did for me. And until I found my first CBD drop, and I had the relaxing, calming effects that a spliff did to me, but without the high that the spliff gave me from my broad spectrum extract, and that really helped me with my Tourette syndrome, with my ADHD, with my everything. Now, but I only realized later on, I was almost consuming because it made me feel good, but I didn't realize that it was making me feel good because it was making me feel better. I just thought it was making me feel good. I didn't realize it was actually helping me. And it's only later on in life that I was like, that's the turning point. That's the point where
to be very clear, when you say it made you feel better, it's not like, hooray, look at the lovely colors. It made you feel, in terms of your health,
better,
which is always my main thrust with this, it made you feel better. So it was a serious turning point for you.
It was, but I only realized it later on. So,
Okay.
and I was just curious. I was curious if Kevin has had a similar thing where he realized actually, he did suffer from social anxiety. He did suffer from being, I suffer from social anxiety. I suffer from being the strange one in the room. I was always bullied for being the weird kid. And I found that cannabis broke down social barriers which were previously up around me. And B, once I was past those social barriers, which I could never previously pass, I thrived as opposed to fell. And I thrived in myself, and I thrived around others. And it gave me an energy, and it gave me a calmness, which only made me feel more whole and feel more accepted, but also removed my twitches. It stopped a lot of my stress, removed a lot of my anger, calmed down my OCD, as well as many other attributes. Now, I only realized that later on in life. I didn't realize that at the time because, a 15-year-old kid doesn't psychologically analyze himself the way a 22-year-old, 25-year-old, 34-year-old does. I was wondering if you had something similar. Sorry.
Ollie, I'm sorry to jump in, Kevin, but I don't think we've ever looked at this particular thing before. Was nobody guiding you? You're saying you're 15, which is a kid, really. Nobody was guiding you or suggesting this? This was a little
no one was
journey
guiding
all
or
on your
suggesting. It was I want to say strictly social pressures. That was the only thing. And for a very long time, I was like, no. I was like, I've got like this underlying mental health condition. I'm not going to try it. And then one day I felt in a very safe space and I just tried it. I don't know why. There was something that clicked and I was like, all right, let's try it. And that was a turning point.
That is such a very pivotal point, and it's so important because the one thing Kevin, you wouldn't know this. One thing I said to Ollie when we started, I said, this is not some hippy dippy show. I'm not interested in that. You want to just be a load of stoners. There's a million other stations you can go to. I was interested in how it could benefit everybody in the full range of its abilities to do so. And Ollie, who has now become a very dear friend, over 80 shows, we have actually finally met. And didn't realize quite how
broke bread.
We did.
We broke bread and we shared a bottle of wine, and then
we did. It was very, very
home.
pleasant. Meanwhile, the point about it is I've seen the difference in Ollie, and I can see because I know him well enough now that when things are not good, I can see some of those. I'm going to call them traits, if you like. Those medical traits come out, and then when they go away, it's the Ollie we know and love. So it's hugely important, and that's why I 100% support everything that you guys are doing. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well,
love you, Russ.
Spot on. Do you know, at the end of the day, first of all, Oliver, my brother. I'm dyslexic and dyspraxic. I went to military boarding school at the age of 11, failed the entrance exam, but got accepted on an academic bursary. Then I was basically stuck on bottom set everything because it was deemed that I was thick, lazy, a dreamer, and the likes of. I ultimately didn't get diagnosed until the age of 33, when I kind of tried to really lift my life up. I just literally went to the job centre, found a flyer for an audio music production college, went there for 5 years, came out with a BA in audio and music production, and then kind of I learned coping strategies from there. But I did actually go through. I mean, I'm diagnosed as chronic depressive because I was just caught in this cycle of thinking I'm thick, I can't do anything. You know, I was scared at the sight of a pen and a piece of paper. That was tragic.
I'm so sorry to hear that, man.
You know, Kevin, can I jump in? What you've hit is so important. It's slightly off track for ABC of CBD, but it's essential to Men's Radio Station. And teachers, when you're very young and you're very vulnerable and you don't know better and you're looking up to them, and they typecast you, if I may say, as being thick when you're not, there are actual issues why, can wreck the rest of your life. And some very eminent writers who I correspond with, I mean authors, were saying, you know, my careers teacher at school said I'd never amount to anything. And now they're best-selling authors, you know, number 1, 2, 3 in the Sunday Times best-selling list. So it's what they know. One of my kids was nearly written off. He went to Oxford, for Christ's sake. That's how wrong they were. So it is so important what you're saying. And to go from being a child to being 33 before this is resolved is a shocking journey. Shocking.
I got diagnosed when I was 18. So I had it 15 years earlier than you, or 18, 19. And I thought that, you know what, I lived 19 years. I lived my entire education with what you had on your shoulders. I had that. I had, every time I passed an exam, my teacher was like, how did you pass that? And when I went to apply to uni, I had my head of year say, I'm not going to write you a letter I'm not going to write you a letter of a recommendation letter. And I was like, why not? He goes, because I feel like I'll be wasting my words on you. And I was like, sorry,
disgusting.
what?
That is
disgusting. And he said, I've got smarter kids who I need to put effort into getting them into universities. It's a waste me writing you a letter. And I was just like, are you out of your mind? So I have had what you've had. And it is the worst thing a human being can do to another human being is make them feel insignificant. Because at the end of the day, none of us are insignificant. You know, our journeys have not been written yet. Just up until that point, and we can be whatever the hell we want to be. And thank God we live in a world now where there is so much tech and there is so many benefits that people like us actually thrive. You know, our ability to be creative, think outside the box, and also roll with those horrific punches we've got our whole lives makes us stronger and tougher. So listen, my hat's off to you, Kev.
Well, you know, as they say, you can either eat lunch or be lunch. And I think both of you have taken it's a Hollywood phrase. You can take the decision to you know, lie there and let the steamroller rush over you, or you get up and you fight. Both of you quite clearly, because the fact of you're here and you're high achievers, have taken that higher ground, and bravo to you both. Because a lot of people don't, because a lot of people are convinced, and there were you, Kevin, saying, well, they must be right. I must be thick as you like. You're not. It's so unfair. It's a real bugbear with me. And so important.
It's a change in time, though. I mean, you know, most importantly, and you know, you've got to look at the kind of the way things were. We actually had a trained dyslexia teacher start at the same time I started my boarding school, and you know, when we were just told what dyslexia was, I was like, well, that really does sound like what I've got. You know,
that kind of sounds like me. You were thinking.
Well,
this is from Veronica. Look at this. I mean, this is echoing everything you say, Kevin, and Ollie. Veronica Curran, who's up in Edinburgh. My son has dyspraxia and now deep depression due to his schooling. Veronica, A, I'm so sorry, and B, I'm not surprised. It's horribly common. And back
Veronica,
to her,
let me. May I a second?
You go ahead.
You need to look into colorimetry glasses. They really help. An assessment basically means that you'll learn two different colors combined, almost like you know, the 3D glasses. It stops kind of visual stress, blurring, letters jumping about, and then past there it is just learning about coping techniques, you know, knowing what you can do when you're overthinking things, knowing when to step back. All of those kind of things help. I mean, you know, even to a point for me, I can't have a white light. If I've got a white light, I'm destroyed by halfway through the day. I've got to have an orange light, because it just takes away the harshness. You know, all of those kind of bits and pieces really do help. But at the end of the day, I've got to say this, like, you know, people who have ICSLs and the likes of, there is normally something that is there. I mean, I was lucky that I found bagpipes at the age of 11. I can't read music. I went on to then do audio and music production degree, got a 2-1 in that. I still can't read music. But then, you know, that came down to a level of creativity that I found that I had, that was kind of to a point kind of eased and augmented by cannabis, which also kind of helped with depression, because it made me feel like I could do something. Certainly, all of those bits and pieces definitely can help. CBD as well by itself, you know, I notice when I play Scrabble, it just kind of takes the edge off the letters, and kind of just makes it a little bit easier to deal with. All of them help ultimately.
So, Kevin, it's counterintuitive. The Scrabble thing is absolutely fantastic. I've never heard that before, because those
it's
who
when
don't
the letters
listen...
the other way round, and you just got to put them. It's like reversing your dyslexia. It's a little bit mental, almost.
Well, what is fascinating?
Incredible.
None of our thousands of guests we've had on Men's Radio over the years has ever mentioned that. But it's as I said, it was counterintuitive, because many people say, "Ooh, you're taking CBD, you're going to be away with the fairies and halfway asleep." You're saying the exact opposite. That if you hadn't taken it, so it's enhancing you, which is quite extraordinary and very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it does have other kind of benefits out there side of there.
Properties.
I mean, it enhances my ability to not really care when I play a really bad golf shot. I think that's really important, because I do lose my temper, and certainly I think it helps. I think it also helps people to tolerate if I'm playing bagpipes in the area and they're not quite tuned right. You know, a little bit of CBD and it's like, Kev's doing his thing again.
I think where you're going wrong, Kevin, I don't want to give advice. I always don't. But I think what you should be doing is playing golf and playing the bagpipes simultaneously.
Whilst rapping.
Because A, that'll completely put your opponents off. They will be slicing to the left, going in the bunker, hitting the ball into the water, missing the putts. It's genius. You're welcome.
So
I like that.
We've got 20 minutes left. There are two more things I really want to speak about. I want to speak about Hemp Hound, and I also want to speak more about the poll. So let's do maybe like 5-10 minutes on Hemp Hound. Let's talk about Hemp Hound that you've set up, what Hemp Hound does, what the, you know, like what the energy was behind it, because, you know, you are this, you know, like this incredible dude for our industry who's doing things that other people are not doing. And that's what we kind of like to portray on this show, is we kind of like to portray the other sides of the industry. Yes, there are brands, and yes, there are people buying and selling CBD. But at the end of the day, that's not what makes a community a community. A community is, you know, through the multiple different actions and the plethora of different actions from a plethora of different people. And I just kind of like, I want to say, first of all, thank you very much for everything you're doing. But what is Hemp Hound? Because like you said from the beginning, you don't buy and sell products. You're not a retailer in this industry. So, you know, like, tell us, share with us. Because if not, I'm going to ask you questions like, how does a Welsh boy learn to play? How does a boy called Kevin, spelt like a Welsh dude, learn to play bagpipes, which is a Scottish instrument? I don't want to get into that conversation.
On this that looks like a practice, looks like a snake china. It's just, anyway, sorry. So Hemp Hound,
I thought I was back at the Edinburgh Fringe there for a second. I was in the Royal Mile.
I got three harmonicas behind me. I could do a little bit of O Susanna and all of that.
Got my little harmonica.
So yeah, Hemp Pound. If you've ever watched the film Highlander, you know where sacred ground is, like you can't fight there. That's pretty much one of the intentions of Hemp Pound. It was basically open to all people who were affiliated to this, that, and the other. There was going to be no politics. It was just going to be an advisory and signposting service that basically just helps people get off the ground whilst constantly kind of showing companies and stockists that these great companies exist.
Is it
And it
like a
wasn't just
watchdog?
The logo is actually based off my Airedale English Point Across called Sprocket. The only difference between the logo and him is that he's got a little bit of a beard, more like me. But yeah, and it was literally, on the scent of the cannabis industry. When people through the years have kind of said, Kev, I'm looking for this, I listen, basically try and understand the person's kind of needs and ethos, and I basically then give them free choices, of people who would be able to help in those dynamics. And it was basically taking that and kind of wrapping it up into this all kind of like, hey, this is the industry, this is the wider industry, farmers, textile producers, whole food producers, all the kind of aspects of legal cannabis in one basket, again with no politics, and promoted. That was the initial kind of angle of Hemp Pound. But of course, I've been writing a lot of articles recently, which, I mean, considering how long it takes to write them, my wife doesn't get happy because she has to do the final edit, like, and it's like, what are you trying to say here? And it's like, I don't know now. But every single thing kind of takes a little bit more time than it should, which means that there's obviously been this slight kind of altering of a focus for Hemp Pound to kind of includes, hopefully at some point not so loud, but to include kind of asking questions of what's going on in the industry, why certain things haven't been addressed. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If I was to say the elevator pitch is, to in the world of cannabis, I loiter with intent. I mean, sounds a bit dodgy, but actually, we all know.
It sounds so dodgy. It sounds so dodgy.
Change
the mission.
As a former copywriter of many years standing, please change your strapline.
Do not use the word loiter.
You're waiting to be arrested. It's just
okay,
dodgy on so many levels.
So was Hemp Pound the driving force behind the start of the poll? Were you getting asked questions and therefore you decided to go out there and get the answers? Or was it a different conversation you were having which prompted this idea for this poll regarding, what's it called, regarding the industry's opinion on, or so the opinions of several people in the industry regarding, or several people what's it called, several tens of people in the industry, several tens of companies in the industry, and their view on novel food? What was the driving force behind that?
Well, as you know, I've been in the industry for a bit, and some of these questions are a bit historic. Like, for example, the lab reports and why they're being applied to full plant products and not isolates. Beyond there, kind of, it's just been kind of building up. The more and more I see people kind of question the FSA on bits and pieces, and the more I see them brush off, it's like, well, we're trying to get answers to questions, but we're constantly doing the same thing to get the answers. How do you kind of break a cycle? And I believed that was basically to create a poll that was all inclusive. I mean, yes, I run it, but it was for everyone in the industry, and that's exactly how I advertised it and pushed it around to as many people as I could. But at the end of the day, on top of it being open, it is historic versus recent questions that yeah, they're just not being answered. And I think a poll just kind of gives the authorities something to think about. I mean, you know, if I have to go out and do a 2-week poll with shorter questions to kind of narrow down things, well, not a problem. I think from what I've seen of the statistics, the appetite is there if the questions ultimately do get answered.
So who did you speak to?
Oh, I actually, there's some people I can't talk about.
No, but I'm just
because
talking about
mainly-
like, were you speaking to brands? Were you speaking to other industry professionals? Were you speaking to consumers, or was it mainly a B2B poll? As in, like where
No, it's all brand.
where did the opinions come from?
You know, the opinions come from a few brands that led to me to create content, to which I then got brands come in to say, great one, Kev, thanks for touching on these bits and pieces, because they do need addressing. But the one real reason why I had to do a poll is because some of them were telling me that they were too scared to stick their hands up and say, you know, what about this? You know, there was a genuine kind of suspicion that, you know, companies could say something and they would be targeted by their place on the public list, or they would be targeted by an association who set up a website to allow companies to target other companies that may or may not be on the list. That, to me, I mean, again, I've been in the industry so long, I've worked with so many companies in some capacity, and for me, it's never really been about the paycheck. It's always been like, see that over there, those two people talking, I connected them. That's my reward, you know. So when I see people really worried about kind of addressing legitimate issues, you've kind of got to ask how you deal with that. And yeah, lo and behold, that's
also,
where the poll
why? No, because I completely agree with you. Because here's the thing, you know, like there are some people who, you know, have everything to lose. You know, they have young kids and they're terrified of, you know, mothers in their mothers group finding out that they run a CBD business because of how it can be portrayed negatively. And the issue is, I understand you've got, you know, people out there who have, you know, managed to not scrape through by the skin of their teeth, but, you know, they've worked so hard to get back onto this register, and they don't know because it is an unregulated space. And it's not like any of us have received a letter or an accreditation or a personalized email or anything like that saying you're through. Our name is on a board, and I understand the logic that, you know, your name can fall off the board if you cause issues. I get that. You know, it's that whole, you know, like, because it's almost been like a gift for people who have got through, you know, I understand that they don't want to waste that. You know, I'm also, you know, like, I'm not anti FSA and I'm not anti community. I'm somewhere in the middle because, you know, there is this logic that most novel food situations, so let's say acai berry, about 4 or 5 years ago, the acai berry went through the novel food process. And like our FSA representative let us know this, or an FSA person we spoke to, that's what they said. They had, we took acai berry through novel food. We had 8 applications. There were 4 people working on it, and we got it done in 2 months. CBD, we've got 4 people working on it, like we do with all of our novel food teams. You have 40,000 applications. 40,000 applications, which means that each one of us needs to go through. Now, our 8 applications, you know, 2 of us, we did 2 each in 2 weeks. And by the end of the 2 weeks, we came together. So it's 8 weeks worth of work in total, but we managed to do it in 2 weeks. And we've come together after critically analyzing these 8 proposals, and we made our decision. And we let the 8 companies know who had put forward the request what the responses were. It was very easy because there were 8 of them. 8 and 4, 2 to 1, logical. We are 1,000 to 1. There are 4 people. There's Paul Tossell and 3 people working beneath him. It's not fair, and it's not their fault. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not their fault because it works out that there's about I think there's like 10,000 applications. Sorry, there's like 2,000 applications, but everyone's put in about 20 products each. So that 20 products each brings you right the way up to your 40,000 applications. We've put in 475 or 875 applications. There are other companies out there who have also put in 1,000 applications. No one deals with that. You're not dealing with like a simple logical market. You're dealing with a runaway train, which they're trying to stop. And it's very hard. And I understand it from their perspective. You know, they're dealing with a mess. We're dealing with a mess. And there's a disconnect. Why? Because they are pissed off with us for leaving it so long, and we are pissed off with them for not giving us an answer. But I would also be terrified. If I was Paul Tossell, I would be freaking terrified. I would not show my face. I would probably quit my job. I would probably leave the UK. Why? Because it's a daunting task. Imagine you had 40,000 reasons on your desk not to go to work. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and you know for what that you're not going to win. You're going to lose. But all of time, your name is now tarnished as that dude. The poor guy, you know, left school, wanting to be a public servant, wanting to work in regulation, and now his name has been fully destroyed because he's had this job dropped on him. He didn't apply for this. And on the other side, I wouldn't stick my head on the line for that job because it's a disgusting job with 40,000 angry applicants. Do you understand what I mean, Kev? Do you understand that side of it? So from that perspective, I'm like, I feel sorry for everyone. I feel so sorry for the brands, but I also feel sorry for the FSA. The whole thing is just carnage. Like carnage. Sorry, I ranted a little bit there. I do apologize.
You know, that's a fair comment because, you know, at the end of the day, we are only human. And certainly from my understanding, Paul Tossell was placed in his position merely weeks before the second announcement of Novel Foods in 2019.
There was 5 years of mess. 5 years of mess, which he's had to come in and clear. Like, he's a brave dude. And, you know, I know all of us are frustrated at him, but sometimes, you know, you got to look at someone who's brave and be like, you're brave. Even if you don't like what they're doing, he's brave. You know what I mean? It's a little bit like,
I assume, Ollie, that it's not just one bloke sitting at a desk like some crazy cartoon.
It's basically, that's it, Russ. There's one bloke who's head of a committee of 3 people with a stack of 40,000 applications to deal with.
From what he said to me the other day, I've got it in an article. He suggested that the ultimate approval actually goes. Is it through the ANCNF or the advisory committee on novel foods? You know, it's like the step up. So, like, you know. Without naming them, the company that has synthetic cannabinoid products, for example. As I understand it, or at least from what Paul put, he wouldn't have been the person who validated them. It would have been the ACNF, whatever. I should have had that handy.
But that's another thing. He's getting blamed for that. And he's getting blamed for that. And so on the other side, you know, I'm not defending him, but I do respect the dude because it's, you know, I always look at people who do crazy shit that I wouldn't do. And I look at them, I'm like, oh, you're a hero. Because at the end of the day, sticking your neck on the train tracks when you know full well trains are going to come every 15 seconds to run over your head. I mean, it's a brave position to put yourself in.
It is. But can I counter that?
By all means, I just wanted to throw out a little bit of defense. Now, tear to shreds, go mental.
No, I'm not going to be that type of person, but certainly, you know, like I will sympathise for Paul because his position has been hard to maintain. But if you're Paul Tossell, right, and I'm me, and I turn around to you and say, I've got proof that a company not only didn't have products on sale pre-13/02/2020, that actually they had no product on sale until after they were validated in 2021. Right now, all of us were told to go through these kind of hoops. Right, you know, the hoops were nice and simple so the industry could understand. So I provided that evidence. You've turned around to me and said, if you have evidence, please submit it, almost in a kind of brush off context. I'm not accepting your evidence, but you can provide evidence if you have it, even though I've already supplied it. When I have companies turn around to me and indicate that they've done exactly the same thing and there has been exactly the same response, you've got to kind of ask a question. Right, you know, is it right for the same complaint from 2 different unrelated sources to be dismissed in such a manner, right? And why was it dismissed? Because, I mean, both times the evidence was provided, both times Paul turned around and said, please provide evidence after.
But on the other side, I kind of like the fact that he's not listening to I'm not saying you are, but he's not listening to bitchiness and he's not listening to snitching. So, because that's another thing. If he was listening, then we could all write messages about our competitor brands who we don't like and cause issues. So the fact that he's almost disengaged from those conversations, I'm not saying is good, but I'm saying on the other side, there is potential. Because if we could all write letters, you know, talking about our biggest competitors doing things wrong, and then their products would get taken off the market, I'm pretty sure everyone would come after Taylor Mammon and all of our products. Why? Because we've got a huge amount of novel food listed products out there. So I kind of like the fact in a weird way that he's not humoring that. Because if he was humoring that, it would make it even messier. Because then not just to bat it off, but it's that whole idea of he's dealing with such a mess. Imagine having to deal with this whole he said, she said as well. And then actually be the person who makes the decision that he said, she said is right. And then he's playing God, which he's not King Solomon. He doesn't have the right to decide who lives or dies. So on the other side, I kind of like the fact he's... Sorry?
Do you know the point where it messed up?
No, not at all.
I believe it was on it was confirmed on a kind of consultant website where Paul Tossell had to basically define whether or not a new product was either an extract or an actual product. And then that kind of cascaded beyond that point to everyone finding out that actually it doesn't matter if it's in the same bottle and it's the same fluid. If it's got a different label on, then it's a different product.
Yeah.
Now, that is the main problem
that's killed us, by the way. That's literally killed our company. The fact that we can't sell a novel food approved product under someone else's brand, it killed me. So I agree with you, Kev. I agree with you.
That's just extraordinary.
It's a very interesting thing.
So the product I sell you, Russ, and the product I've always sold you, it's a product which we've manufactured in-house. 2 or 3 different brands use that product. If a third brand wanted it, they can't. So if a fourth brand wanted it, I can't sell them the same product again, even though I've got 3 other novel food approved brands in market using that exact product. I can't sell it to a third, even though my recipe has been approved 3 times over. I think it's mental, Kev. I completely agree with you.
What is the logic? I don't understand that. What's the logic of that?
The logic is that every single
product...
why
I ask questions.
No, there is no logic.
Kevin,
I'm not disagreeing with you. No, I'm completely on your side. I just always try and be the voice of reason. And if Paul Tossell was here talking negatively about you, I'd be like, listen, all right, Kev is in this weird position where he has the voices of people around him and he's just disseminating the education that he's got from individuals back to you. I would stick up for everyone who doesn't have the counter voice on my show, who I believe deserves that counter voice, because there's always logic. Like my buddy said yesterday, he goes, we're talking about something his ex-girlfriend hates him. And he was like, well, if you ask my ex-girlfriend, I bet I was a real piece of shit. So in kind of the other side of the story also makes sense. And I am not on any one side. I'm on the side of the patient. It's all about the end consumer getting the right product. That's what it's always been about for me. People like me and you, Kev, who need CBD, who need cannabis, we deserve to have a right, logical, transparent product. But I'm not disagreeing with you. It's very important that everyone out there knows I'm not on the side of the FSA. I'm not on the side of Kev. I'm every man, just like Russ in today's episode. But I just wanted to make sure that I know it's a mess. And a mess is usually messy on both sides. Half the room's not usually clean when there's a mess. There's usually mess everywhere. So that's quite important to understand, that there is mess everywhere. Sorry, Kev, I ranted again. You're a very good muse, man. You're a great
Kevin,
muse.
you have 2 minutes to state your case and get it all off your chest. Off you go.
Right. Okay, then. So basically, the hemp and CBD industry doesn't need to be the way it is. And I think Oliver touched on it earlier. There is a blurring of when one thing starts and another thing ends. You know, there does need to be a clear distinction of where the food supplemental industry is, where the medicinal industry is. And I'm just going to say this, if you check out the definition of ingestion, right, and look at it in a partaking sense, there's even an argument for that being a way of ingestion. Ultimately, I think cannabis is a food before medicine. You know, at the end of the day, your body needs stuff to carry on its basic function. We should not be put in a position where we are starved of something before we can get access legally. You know, that is pretty much what I'm about. And I try to carry that as much as I do onto Hemp Hound without kind of it creating too much issue. Obviously there's the poll, but you know, but ultimately you know, cannabis is such a marvelous plant. You know, I'm pretty certain I can make an entire set of bagpipes out of it. I'm pretty certain you can grow it out of fields.
Please tell me
I
that
know
sound
that.
better, please.
I love you so much. I love the fact that it all comes back to bagpipes. I love you so much.
Cheese,
You're brilliant. Brilliant dude.
If someone gives me a recipe for hemp seed cheddar, then that would be it. That'd be bagpipes, hemp cheese, cannabis, and pretended to be a rapper in the 90s.
Sounds like a party to me. Kevin, you've been a fantastic guest. I'm sure
You've been a great
Ollie will
guest,
be seeing
man.
you again. Thank you so much,
very
Ollie.
much, gentlemen.
Always an absolute pleasure. I feel sorry for your neighbours if you got a bagpipe. So apart from that, it looks lovely where you are. That's it.
She always drives out quickly when I start up.
Screaming like Edvard Munch, the scream. Right, that's it. We've got to go. We'll see you same time next week, God willing, one way or the other. Until then, try and stay out of trouble.
God bless you, Ross. God bless you, Kev.